Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. The day that wasn't day 15, the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed trial, the day that got canceled, and then out of nowhere, folks, as chaos reigned at Norfolk Superior Court, Aidan TurtleBoy Kearney was indicted 2 further times by a grand jury of his peers. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Grant Smith Ellis, also known as Towel. Let us review the day that wasn't in the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed trial for those Towel friends who missed it. Those of you who have been here will get this for a third time, but that's okay. Being informed and engaged members of the Towel universe is truly what life is all about. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you also missed it, we broke 1,000 Towel subscribers on the Towel channel. It was a moment of celebration. You all have so kindly taken Towel to 1,000 Towel subscribers. It was a beautiful moment, ladies and gentlemen. Now, folks, I must say, we will continue to review this day. It started, folks. It started with chaos and the Karen Reed trial being canceled, potentially due to Karen's health, due to a serious last-minute situation that no one really understands. But the new indictments against Aidan Kearney were announced in the afternoon, just after 1:45 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see them up on your screen. 2 more felony witness intimidation indictments. Aidan Kearney's charges from Stoughton District Court bound over to Norfolk Superior Court. Kearney will face arraignment either via summons or arrest at some point soon. We will keep you updated. But yes, folks, later in the day, Kearney was then in civil court as he got news about his 2 new indictments and a motion from Lindsay Gattani, one of the named victims in Kearney's open criminal felony cases, was in civil court to move to dismiss a lawsuit that Gattani alleges was filed frivolously and in bad faith by Kearney and in violation of the anti-SLAPP statute, and oral arguments resulted in the judge in the case taking the motion under advisement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will take you back to the beginning of the day. We will quickly run through what happened. At 8:30 a.m. or so, ladies and gentlemen, the media, including Little Towel, were let into the Norfolk Superior Court. Yes, folks, as we were let into the Norfolk Superior Court at 8:30, about 8:33 a.m., we were standing, a few of us, it was the court TV person, it was somebody from Canton Community TV, I think it was Andrea, Sue O'Connell was behind me, Penny from Channel 4 was there, Katie Benoit was there, and the guy from Channel 5 was there. We were standing there in a huddle. We were waiting in line for our media passes. They were about to hand them out. In dramatic scenes, folks, dramatic scenes, everything came grinding to a halt in that clerk's office. At 8:36, as we're all still standing there with the process ground to a halt, people they weren't running around with their heads cut off like chickens, but their atmosphere was tense. At 8:36 a.m., ladies and gentlemen, an email comes in from the Public Information Office at the Supreme Judicial Court in charge of all courts in the Commonwealth, informing the media that the day's Karen Reed and John O'Keefe trial was completely canceled. But was that the end? No, ladies and gentlemen, that was only the beginning, because rumors started swirling, unconfirmed though they were, that there would be an 11 a.m. hearing. And then, ladies and gentlemen, things got even more intense. In ruckus scenes around the courthouse, Towel watched as the O'Keefe family arrived for the day's testimony. John's now thrice orphaned niece and nephew prepared to testify. Ladies and gentlemen, the O'Keefe family, according to reports of people who were walking by, were told to get back in their car and leave. Karen Reed and her family never showed up to court at all, or her defense team. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution, however, did show up, and they were in the courthouse, but they had little to say. Let's look at Hank Brennan's arrival. You could tell something was off. We still don't really know what happened, ladies and gentlemen, but here was Hank Brennan's arrival.
didn't fully make sense, but
that was Hank Brennan's arrival, folks. The scenes were tense. Little did we all know just minutes later court would be canceled for the day. But no, did the media leave? We would refuse to leave. Oh, folks, Chris notes that Towell is affectionately sometimes known as Grant, Howard Cosell, David Attenborough, Towell Smith Ellis, David Attenborough, of course, the legendary BBC presenter, because sometimes Towell will say, oh, look, we are observing the Karen in her natural courtroom environment. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was Hank Brennan's arrival. Did it stop there? No, folks, because Hank Brennan then had to leave the court after it was announced the day's trial, the proceedings were canceled. And what did Hank Brennan have to say to the media? Let's take a listen now.
Try to enjoy the day. It's beautiful out.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Have a good day, guys. Hey.
Let's watch that one more time in HD to see if we can get a hint as to his body language.
Mr. Brennan, do you know why court was canceled today?
Try to enjoy the day. It's beautiful out.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Have a good day, guys.
He's not beaming, folks. He's not beaming. He looks concerned. I think for obviously Karen Reed's health might have been an issue. We don't know exactly, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know exactly what happened. But, folks, I will say, folks, that it was a very concerning development. And then Hank Brennan came back to court minutes later. No one in the media knew what was going on. It was scenes of literal chaos. Reporters very confused, walking around like chickens with their heads cut off. And then Mr. Brennan returned to court.
Mr. Brennan, can you shed any light on the situation today?
How is everybody?
Good. How are you, sir? Now you can see Hank Brennan, folks, delivering the news to, I think, some of the victims' advocates possibly up there on the courthouse stairs. It was all developing in real time. And then, folks, this, you heard Mr. Brennan left the first time. Then Mr. Brennan returned to the courthouse again. You just saw he actually left again, came back a third time, and as that was happening, we got this news from Jenna Rocco in a deleted tweet from 9/17 this morning that Karen was not feeling well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, things continued to get intense, because we also saw the moment where Dolly Vision and PJ Vision were, state police were sent over to them by the Free Karen Reed people for reasons that didn't make sense, because Dolly Vision and PJ Vision didn't actually do anything. State police quickly talked to them. Nothing really happened as a result. We'll show just a quick few moments of that interaction. The state police walked away. PJ Vision and Dolly Vision just walked away. There was nothing that actually happened. Everything was peaceful. That was a completely unnecessary interaction. I don't know why the FKR people called the police over to those people. Anyway, then, ladies and gentlemen, then the moment started rapidly developing. So Towell runs back over to the court after observing that interaction between the state police and the FKR people and Free and PJ Vision and Dolly Vision. And Towell at 11 a.m. sees the court has come into session on a Zoom feed not regularly accessible. Karen, there was one reporter in the courtroom before he got kicked out. It was John Hall. John Hall reported that Karen Reed's lawyer came up on the Zoom feed. Alan Jackson initially told the court that he didn't want to turn his camera on, ladies and gentlemen, because he had a sweatshirt on. Judge Canoni told him he could do so anyway. David Yannetti, Karen Reed's lawyer, popped up on the Zoom in a suit. And then, folks, Judge Canoni closed the courtroom. She started a sidebar, turned the white noise on, kicked the media out of the courtroom, and the prosecution, Hank Brennan, Adam Lally, Caleb Schillinger, and Laura McLaughlin were all there. They were in the courtroom. Reed's two attorneys on the Zoom. Unclear if Karen was on the Zoom. And the clerk, then 10 minutes later, dramatic moments, came out of the courtroom, the little courtroom, and said to the 6 media members there, he said, that was just a scheduling hearing. I can't tell you anything. And then one of the media members said, well, is one of the parties related to the case sick? Or is it a medical issue related to one of the parties of the case? And the court clerk said, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it was an intense day. We still don't have clarity as to who was sick, why they were sick, or if we're even going to be into session tomorrow. We're going to plan on it, but we don't know what's going on, folks. This has been intense. So after all that wraps up, after 11 a.m., let's look at Hank Brennan leaving the court. We're going to watch this twice because we're going to let it buffer and play back.
Have a good day.
Enjoy the weather, Mr. Brennan.
Now let's watch one.
Have a good day.
Enjoy the weather, Mr. Brennan.
That was it, folks. That's how the day ended. It was quite intense. There was just an air of confusion, of uncertainty, of just pure chaos. And then, folks, Aidan Kearney got indicted literally in the middle of the towel stream. We broke 1,000 towel subscribers. Aidan Kearney's charges were bound over to Norfolk Superior Court. And then Lindsay Gattani's motion to dismiss the civil case filed by Kearney, despite Lindsay being a named victim in Kearney's open felony cases, was taken under advisement. Folks, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. That's how you review the day that wasn't in the John O'Keefe and Karen Reed trial. How can so much happen on a day when court was canceled, you may ask? Well, folks, I am the energetic little towel here to explain it to you, and we just did so in under 12 minutes, and that makes us efficient, absolutely erudite, cogent, and informed little towels. Follow along tomorrow, youtube.com/@GrantSmithEllis. Where is all this going? I have no idea. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we'll somehow involve the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Chewbacca, who's actually a dog named Chloe in a wig, and me continuing to think that I'm a horse racing announcer towel. Oh, dear goodness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to finish this clip. Go talk to the towel friends. Tune in tomorrow morning. God help us all. My name's Grant Smith Ellis. Tune in. Watch live with special care and cam coverage. youtube.com/@GrantSmithEllis.